Okay, and now we're going to look at the equipment viewer tab with respect to our stats and gearing up for specific situations. By this point in the guide, you should have a good basis of combat, as we've reviewed how to train each level, what each level means, and which levels to use. Now we're going to talk about a little bit more of a variety and gearing up for specific situations. I'm going to use my main account for this because it's a little bit easier, but I am in a free-to-play world with free-to-play items, and I will, after this part, switch over to my main account on a members world and show you kind of slot by slot better gear. So let's open up the equipment viewer tab, and as you can see here, you have your person. We're going to look at the variety of amulets that are available in free to play. These amulets are also available in pay to play, but there are better variants of them, which I will show you shortly. First, and this will be your best amulet you can get depending on your means and financial status in the game. If you're starting out, this is over 1k to buy an amulet of power, but it is worth it in the long run once you get to that point and you can afford that. But there are some cheaper options, and I will show the prices here just quickly. You can see the value of each amulet. Now some of these are specific to combat styles. This is an amulet of magic, amulet of defense, amulet of power, and amulet of strength. Now first, let's look at the amulet of strength. As you can see here, this doesn't provide any attack or defense bonuses. What the amulet of strength provides specifically is melee strength. So in situations where you are trying to increase your max hit, you're using a scimitar or maybe a two-handed weapon of some sort to hit higher on an opponent. A lot of people use this in PvP, PKing situations because you want the highest strength to get yourself the highest possible max hit available. So people use the amulet of strength, and that is specific there. If you are in an instance where you've trained your attack level maybe to get to a certain weapon unlock, and now your strength level has fallen behind and you want to bring your strength level up, maybe you might want to not use a amulet of power, which is more of a distributed increase, and you might want to just focus on getting your max hit increased, your strength increased. Next, let's look at the amulet of defense. This is a purely defensive amulet. This isn't going to provide any offensive attack bonuses. This is good in a situation if you are low level with low hit points, maybe running through some monsters for a quest. You can put this item on and it's going to give you bonuses. So if, for instance, you were wearing melee armor, let's just take that off, and you can see it's going to provide you with a little bit more defense. Also going to provide you with some magic defense. As noted earlier on in the guide, when you are wearing armor, you are kind of just a giant conductor for mage, for magic use. So if you're in this case, this provides you with a little bit of magic defense to make your magic defense a little bit closer to 0. So if you're in a situation where maybe you're running through monsters attacking you with melee, maybe rangers as well, and then some mage monsters depending on the quest, depending on the dungeon you're in, this is going to kind of give you a better all-around solution. Amulet of defense, in that case, it's purely defensive. You're probably not going to use it for training. You're almost definitely not going to use it for AFK training against weaker monsters. You're just simply going to use it in an instance where you have to kill a monster that is stronger than you. Most likely it'll be a quest, killing a dragon, killing a giant, or running past monsters. You also might want to use it if you've got to a situation where maybe you've gone to giants a little bit early and you're not so sure if you're at the right level. Maybe you're not following a guide. You can take along a amulet of defense with you and put it on and just feel it out. If you feel like they're hitting low on you because your defense level is high and your armor is there to support you, you can now take this off and maybe throw on your amulet of power, which we will cover now. So next is the amulet of power, and this is the best amulet in the free-to-play worlds that you can get as a low-level player, and it's going to provide you with an overall attack bonus, defense bonus, and it also is going to provide you with a bonus for melee strength. As you can see here on the screen on the right hand side, the green writing, it's going to show you what it's offering. This is an option in my client, which we reviewed in a previous video. the plugin that's going to show me what I've got. So it's going to give me a bit of a prayer bonus. It's going to give me a melee strength bonus, not as much as the amulet of strength, but it's going to give me some, and it's going to give me an all-around defense bonus. It's in its situation, as you can see here in comparison to the amulet of defense, it is only 1 point lower than the amulet of defense. However, the amulet of defense is much cheaper. So as a starting player, if you are not being mentored, or you haven't been given any money from another player, or you just are simply a poor player, So if you're a player that's just starting off and doesn't have a lot of money to use, we'll go back to our cost comparison here. You can see this is 2k for a amulet of power and under 1k for the amulet of defense. So early on quest, maybe you're fighting Demon Slayer, trying to get some of that attack experience, you can use that as an option. But overall, you're going to want to strive to have this amulet of power. If you are training currently and you're not wearing an amulet, you are wasting time and you're wasting damage per second. So you should focus on that. Now, in comparison to the amulet of power versus the amulet of strength, if you are training attack, if you're training accuracy, you're going to want to have an amulet of power on, because it outweighs the amulet of accuracy. Amulet of power would be your option. If you can't afford the amulet of power, if you're just starting out, you can look at the amulet of accuracy, which we will cover in a second. But basically, your amulet of power should be your goal and what you can default to. It's going to give you a little bit of everything, and it's going to be the amulet you can rock throughout the majority of the game. But it's not going to give you the best in instance where you're using something like the magic skill. So before we go into the magic skill and talk about the gear, I'm just going to show you the amulet, and I'm going to take off all the armor because that's going to counteract the effect. But as you can see here, an amulet of magic, if you are going to train your mage, you're going to want to increase your magic offense. If you're using magic for safe spotting and a quest, if you're in a safe spot and using magic, you're going to want to increase your magic to the best you can. Now, if you are splashing, which I covered early on in the video, if you are splashing, you're going to want to have a negative magic offense. However, it's most likely you're not going to take that route if you're a brand new player to the game. If somebody's splashing, it typically means they have a main account with lots of money, or if you've gotten to the point where you're a brand new account and have the money to do splashing, you probably don't necessarily need this guide. At that point, you probably should be pretty well versed in how to manage your bonuses, because you would have had to open this window to inspect your armor. So I'm going to take the amulet of magic off, and I'm going to show you the amulet of accuracy. This is a purely offensive, so it's kind of the opposite of the defensive. It is just a purely offensive amulet, and it's going to give you a little bit in each of the skills, in each of the combat styles, I should say, and it's going to increase your accuracy. So if you're a brand new player, you might not be able to afford one of these, the amulet of power just yet, you can look at the amulet of accuracy. If you're training your attack level, because you want to increase your accuracy as much as possible with a low attack level. As mentioned earlier on in the guide, your attack level determines your accuracy. You want to be hitting something on the opponent, not a 0. So you want to focus on always getting a hit. That's going to increase the experience you gain per hour and your DPS. You always want to be getting yourself a hit, and the higher your accuracy you have is going to guarantee that, or is going to get you as close as you possibly can until your attack level reaches that point. So early on, amulet of accuracy is very handy. Next, we're going to talk about the magic gear and the difference between magic gear, range gear, and melee gear. So as I said, if you're wearing melee gear, you're not really focused on magic. As you can see here, I have a negative 65 magic bonus. So if I'm casting in this armor, I'm not going to hit very well on my opponent. At a low magic level, I might not be hitting at all. I also have a low range bonus. So if I'm using a weapon, a bow and arrow, with that in hand, I'm at minus 11. I'm not going to be doing the best now hitting. My accuracy is going to be low against my opponent. But if I take off the melee armor, the big, heavy, obviously it's a little bit of common sense there. It's clunky, it's large. You're not going to be able to be very agile and operate your bow. So if I put on and this isn't everything. Typically you'd want to fill all these slots if you can. but I'm just showing this basically what I could do with my inventory. But now I've got ranging gear on, and my range bonus, attack bonus is up there. So my accuracy is going to be a lot better. I'm going to hit a lot stronger. If I'm using magic, for instance, I've got a staff in my hand, and I've got some magic gear on. As you can see, under these bonuses, they're changing with the increase, with the addition of magic equipment. Now, if I throw on an amulet of magic, again, plus 10, I'm going to hit a lot better against my opponent using magic. This also, magic to magic, is going to give me a defensive bonus. If someone was casting on me, I've got big, long, loose robes on, a spell's not going to be as strong, whereas if I'm wearing armor, I am one giant conductor. I'm basically a lightning rod out there, ready to get hit. Sorry, defensive, right? You're basically a large lightning rod in that. However, if you are being attacked by a ranger, you are very strong defensively because an arrow isn't going to penetrate the armor. So you have to gear your selection of your attack style first and your opponent on you. So as you go through the quests, if you explore outside of free-to-play, but even still in free-to-play, you might be facing a ranger boss and your attack style might be magic. Maybe you've primarily focused on magic. If you focused on your magic and say you're, some kind of maybe a pure account, you have very low offensive melee stats and even defensive stats, but you have a high magic and you're facing a ranger boss, you might want to wear armor, but now you've got faced with the dilemma of having low magic. So you probably want to do somewhat of a synergy, whereas you can see now I'm going to throw on the Amulet of Power. So say I want to get the best range defense I can, but also get my magic defense up there. Amulet of Power, okay, maybe not. Maybe I want to use an Amulet of Magic. That gives me 10 opposed to just 6. Now I can say, what helps me here? Okay, well, so as you can see here, range gear doesn't do as poorly for my magic. Or even maybe I can use a robe. I can switch this out and now I've got a partial gearing. So I still have, I'm getting back closer, I'm getting closer to 0. In this situation, if I want that high range defense, I'm gonna do the best that I can to get that defense up, to keep that defense up. So now I've got maybe a partial setup. Now maybe I'm gonna hold on to my staff and then we're getting closer, we're getting something back on towards the list, right? Towards an equilibrium between the attack and an equilibrium between the defense. So even here, we're looking, all right, now we're getting closer. You also can look at things like swapping out your plate legs. Like plate armor is gonna be very difficult for casting. A synergy of maybe leather and mage gear, or simply wearing all leather. Now my range defense stays up and my magic offense is now above 0. I'm a little bit stronger, right? So now maybe I want to look at using an Amulet of Power. There we go. We basically got almost close to the same range defense we had in the early 30s, but we have that magic offense. So basically you want to play around with the gear you're wearing. You want to do a synergized setup. As you get further on, if you get to the members worlds, doing some early bossing, maybe you're in the Barrows, it's a spot where you're going to use a staff known as the Iban staff that doesn't scale off of your offensive magic bonus, it scales off your level, which means you can wear tanky gear and still cast a spell, because that way you've got to tank hits from the bosses who are going to hit you very strong with melee, but you need to use magic against them because they're weak to magic. So that kind of ideology is going to come into effect here. Like I said, depending on the bosses you're facing and what your combat style is, if you're facing a boss that's melee and your strength is melee, you can gear up accordingly. I want to be wearing all armor because I want to be as tanky as possible, and I'm going to wear the Amulet of Power because the Amulet of Power is going to give me offensive bonuses as well as defensive bonuses. It's a mix because I still want to be hitting against them. Being very tanky and not doing any damage against your opponent isn't going to help you. You're just going to tank their hits eventually until they get hits through you and take you down. So you want to make sure you can still do damage in them, because a good defense is a good offense. You've got food. You've got food in your inventory slot most likely if you're taking on a boss. So you can get hit and hit and hit and eat. As long as you're watching your health levels, you can eat. The boss cannot. So you still want to be doing a fair amount of damage against them. So in summary, specifically, depending on your attack style, if you're just training on cows early on, you want your gear that's going to maximize your effect on your opponent. If your opponent isn't going to hit very much against you, low levels, goblins, cows, even at certain points as you get a higher defense level, if you get defensive levels and you're wearing rune armor, if you've got defensive level 40 or defensive level 50 or even up in the 60s, as you go on to the combat levels that are in their 20s, they're not going to hit as strong against you. So as you go on and your defense level increases and it gets up to towards 40, gets up towards 50, you're not going to need as strong as defense bonus even against monsters that are increasing in combat level themselves as you increase. So again, if you're focusing on levels like 20, if you're in the combat range of 60, yes, they're higher than the original monsters you were fighting that are down below 10. However, your defense has increased. So again, you can focus and be consistent in keeping those attack bonuses up because you want to do the most damage per second over a period of an hour to get the most experience per second. So if you're doing a range training, you want to have your best range bonus. If you're doing magic, you want to have your best magic bonus. Melee armor is going to give you that strength bonus, and you might want to consider swapping the power out for a strength amulet to give yourself a higher max hit if your accuracy is already in good range. Now, finally, let's look at potions. I've got two types of potions here that are available in the free-to-play. First is energy potion. That is just going to be very good, especially in a boss situation if you have to move around quickly. You can see here in this tab that full plate armor is very heavy, 42 kilograms, and that is going to drain your run energy down very quickly, especially if you're not in a member situation where you've got the agility skill to support your run energy or weight reducing armor. That energy is going to disappear very quickly, and in that case you want to carry some run energy potions to boost your energy to make sure you can stay running. If you're facing a boss, take note, you don't want to go into a boss fight with no run energy, especially if you have no teleport options in an emergency. Especially if you're in an instance, if you are in an instant situation, you might lose all your gear, your hardened gear, so you want to have an ability to get away or to get through areas that contain monsters that are going to deal consistent damage to you up until the point where you face a boss. So that's energy potions. The next potions are combat related, and that is your strength potion. So you're going to look at my levels here. I have a strength level of 90, and I am going to take a sip of this potion. I'm going to drink this potion, and you're going to see my strength level has been boosted. It is now at 102. These are very good to use for boss situations. If you want to boost your levels, you're going to do much more damage against your boss with a 10 level increase. They're also good to use in training situations with the exception of your finances. If you can afford the cost of the potion, they're fairly cheap for intermediate players. For a new player, these could run some costs, but they're fairly cheap, and you're going to have this dose and this level up, and then once it runs out, you're gonna have to hit it again, but it's gonna keep those levels up. Early on, if you can afford it, if you have the change, if you're level 1 strength, as we saw earlier in the video, you can get your attack level up to level 8 very quickly. If you have a 1 strength and you've got 8 attack, you can hit a dose of this potion and you're gonna have 10 strength. You can hit a dose of this potion and you're going to have level 12 strength plus your 8 accuracy, and that is going to bring your strength training or the remainder of your attack level training to 10 to unlock black weaponry. It's going to increase the speed of that. It's going to be a lot less labor intensive. You're going to hit a lot less zeros. You're going to do a lot more damage per second. So now I've transitioned over to a members world, and I'm going to grab some of the better gear that I have, and I'm just going to show you how this affects the attack bonuses, defense bonuses. And in members world, one of the most important things for training against AFK methods, there's a variety of crabs in the members worlds that are very, very low defense, very, very low offense, and very, very high hit points, which means you can engage them and hit damage against them, and you're not going to kill them quickly and have to re-click. So they're AFK, they're a lot lazier, they're a lot easier for players to do, and they will attack you if you're in their little bubble, which means you can almost, leave your computer to train if you're, doing something else. If you're watching some Netflix, you can put a guy in the crabs, and you just have to make sure your account doesn't log out, and also reset the aggro timers. So you're going to want strength, melee strength bonuses. As you're going to see here, I'm going to put on a members item. That's going to give me a melee strength bonus. And you want that strength bonus to increase your hit. You want to do the most damage per second as you're training. That is going to increase the time, that is going to decrease the time required to do your training. So again, here I'm going to put on this Amulet of Fury. You're going to see this strength bonus increase. I'm going to put on these gloves. These are Barrows gloves. These are unlocked from the Recipe for Disaster quest, and we're getting this up. I mean, you can see the difference already in melee strength available between members and non-members. Now I'm going to hold this weapon. Obviously the weapon's going to give it a huge bonus, but here we're going to put on a helmet, and again, melee strength is going to increase. Now this is just general armor, or sorry, that's what I meant to put on there, shield. Now this is just general armor. You can watch the defensive bonuses increase, but you're going to see differences. These boots specifically, the dragon boots, have a melee strength bonus as well, and then there's this ring, the berserker ring, melee strength. So your melee strength bonus, I mean, again, my levels are very high. I've unlocked some good equipment, and this is some costly equipment in the members world, but you can see that that is very high as well, and you can see that this slash bonus is very high. That's in part to do with the weapon using, as I said earlier, combat styles. If you're using a slash combat style, if your opponent is weak to slash combat styles, right, you want to increase that. If you're going to use a slash combat style, if your opponent is weak to slash, you want to use slash. Same for stab, same for crush. If they're weak to crush, you want to have that as high as you can. So that's just an example of some things in members worlds. As we talk about defense, a decision that you have to make as a member facing some of the higher members quest bosses is, am I going to go for a very high offense and very good DPS, or am I going to equip the shield, right? And that's going to change what I can do. I mean, in this instance, this is called a defender. This item gives you a lot of offensive bonuses in your shield slot, opposed to a shield. But you gotta take that into consideration. You're playing a bit of a balancing act, and as I always stress, you want to be using the wiki. The wiki is your friend. The wiki is going to tell you from left to right. It's going to tell you what your opponent's strengths are, what your strengths are. You're also be watching guides, and you can gear up accordingly. And as I said earlier, I only showed a couple items in each slot to boost, but whatever is available to you, and you can see that. I'll post a link to the wiki again, and you can go on the wiki and look at items for each slot. You want to have them in. I've got this slot empty here, but you would want that full of a shield that is going to give you bonuses. You want to have the best gear you can. And free to play, you're very limited, but you want to have the best gear you can that's going to increase your offensive bonuses and melee strength if you're just simply training against weak monsters. And if you're going into a boss fight or a fight where you want some defense, you want to have a mixture of good DPS in your offensive, as well as gear that is going to give you a strong defensive bonus specific to their combat style. So if you're going against a strong magic boss, you want to make sure that this is higher. If they hit with melee strength, then you want to make sure that, depending on what their attack style is, be it stab, slash, or crush, that you are gearing toward defending against that specific style. Defending, and as well as being offensive against monsters using kind of the research method, is something I see new players struggling with, something that I see even intermediate players struggling with and not gearing specifically toward. This game does require some research, it does require some thought into gearing. It's a very important part, and you'll see people typically going through some higher level bosses or some mid-level bosses, and it'll look very easy and it'll kind of leave question marks. That is because the gear setup is there's a lot of front-end loading with the plan and the strategy, so that when you go into that fight, that boss is easier for you because you're set up to defend or attack against their respective styles. Lastly, we are going to talk about the prayer skill. We covered this briefly in episode 2, as well as covering it earlier on in this video with respect to how to train prayer and how important it is early on to bury bones to increase your prayer level. We're going to focus on what the prayers mean under the prayers tab and the 3 most important prayers for combat. So at level 37, you unlock the Protect from magic prayer, level 40 protect from missiles, which is ranged attacks, and level 43, which is protect from melee. These 3 protection prayers are very important as you increase the level and the difficulty at which you're moving through the game. If you are doing boss fights, you want to protect against their style. If you have the prayer level to do that, it is going to be more important than even the armor you're wearing. You can go into some boss fights wearing no armor at all, and the protection prayers alone are going to provide you with the best defense. Prayer level dictates the amount of prayer you have, and that can be indicated here on your heads up display and the time you have remaining in each prayer. So when I toggle a prayer on, it's going to tell me the time for that prayer to be in effect. You can see that there, it's 2 minutes and 39 seconds. So I can leave this prayer on right now for 2 minutes and 36 seconds while I'm fighting a boss. My prayer level specifically, so let me recharge my prayer points here. I'm level 70, so you can see I get almost 5 minutes of prayer time. At level 43, that's going to be lower, so you have to be aware of that when you go into fights. But training this prayer to defend against certain styles is extremely important. Costly, but important. There are some bosses in the game, specifically in the members areas, where you're going to have to switch between prayers. Currently, something I'm working on right now is getting the fire cape, which you can look up, and you can look up the fight caves with the final Jad fight. And in that fight, you've got to actually switch between prayers and read the initial animation to toggle between the prayers to protect yourself. In that fight, the boss can deal a one-hit amount of damage to you, so it is extremely important not to miss a prayer. In most cases, in free-to-play and in early members worlds, in members quests, I should say, you're just going to have to protect against a certain style. So you're going to have to use melee. If a melee is attacking you, as instance, I can go and fight this guy. He's not going to be able to score a hit against me. Some bosses will. They can hit through prayer. They have the ability to, but typically your guides, the wiki, is going to tell you what you have. Or if you're going to a boss fight, in some cases you have rangers. In one of the quests, there's trolls throwing rocks at you. You protect from missiles so you don't take any damages on your lead up to that boss fight. The prayer skill is one of the skills that is often not understood by new players. Fresh off of Tutorial Island and in the Lumbridge area, you aren't gonna maybe know what your prayer is gonna offer you. Even if you read these, you're seeing, okay, it's offering me a little bit of some kind of bonus here. But prayer is a difficult skill to train. It's time consuming and it can be costly with burying bones. So players often leave it, and then players often leave it and say kind of, I'll do it later, and then they get to the point where their prayer level is low and they've got to specifically grind bones or purchase bones to get their prayer up to 43 for quest requirements, or as I said, if you're going on to move to a next monster. So if you moved on from cows, you're in the Stronghold of Security, and then maybe you're going to fight giants beneath Varrock and Edgeville, you might want to have protection prayers so that they can't hit against you and you can get yourself out of a sticky situation. You're not going to want to use all your prayer just training, because it's going to be time consuming to come back to an altar and charge it, but you can have a full bar of prayer, and if they hit you down and you run out of food, you can stay in that spot until your hit points get to a certain level, to a certain comfortable level. Don't let them drain down to where you don't feel comfortable. Maybe let your hit points go down to half, and then you can quickly toggle on a protect from melee prayer and get yourself out of a dangerous situation. So it is very important for players early on to train their prayer levels and know what it represents. Okay, so here's one last thing I'd like to cover in this guide about combat, and this isn't necessarily applicable to the beginning stages of combat, but this is just about the F keys and how important F keys are for switching between your inventory tab, your prayer tab, and your spell book if it's applicable. This is the Barrows. This is one of the first bosses that you'll get to when you're in members, one of the more applicable ones. It's where this Barrows armor comes from that a lot of people are familiar with, and you've got to fight 6 different bosses and 6 different warriors here, and each one, most of them have the same combat style. They're weak to magic, but some you got to switch. For instance, this hill, this is Aram, this Barrow is Aram, and this is Toreg, and you're gonna have to switch between your tabs pretty efficiently. So I'm gonna run in here and just give you a quick example. Turn this on. So I'm gonna drop in here, and I've got to switch my F key right away. I've got it F2 as my prayers, and this guy's gonna come out. So I'm gonna fight this guy, and your F keys are gonna make things much more efficient for you in terms of speed and combat. So in this case, my prayer drains in this spot, and I want to get my prayer turned off as quick as possible. So I'm going to shut my prayer off, and I'm going to get out of here, and then I'm going to run over and kill this other boss who is a different combat style. So you can see there I'm switching between my tabs. I've got F2, so let's just repeat that. I'm over here on my prayer as I come out of this spot. Now that's F2, my prayers. Now I'm going to hit F1, switch to my gear, do a quick gear swap. Now I got a new set of gear on. I need this shovel to dig into the barrow. F2, turn on my prayer. Escape key, special attack, and take out this guy. Back to my prayer. In an instance where maybe your prayer is getting low, quick F1 key, and I can change out and hit my prayer pots here, fill up my prayers. You can see the bar. Or if they're getting a hit on me, I can switch my food and back to my prayers if need be, right? So that's why that's where your F keys are very important. Your F keys are going to allow you to switch between those tabs a lot more efficiently, and also, as I'm on this note about efficiency, mentioned it in my previous guide, and that is the center button on your mouse. You want to get used to using the center button on your mouse. Shut the prayer off, and I get out of here. Up these stairs. You want to get used to using the center button on your mouse to move the camera around. You don't want to be using these arrow keys because your left hand, if you've got your keyboard set up in the more standard way, probably 90% of the world, 99% of the world, your left hand can be on your F keys and doesn't need to go over to the arrow keys. So okay, I'm going to run over here, right? All right. Gonna dig down here, switch back, prayer on. I didn't do a gear swap, my bad. Should have swapped my gear before I came down, but kind of distracted. So okay, now I've got my prayer on here. I'm watching my prayer. Oh, but my prayer's getting low, so I can hit a pot if necessary, right? And continue on here. And if you're using a spec weapon, escape key, I can do another spec on the warrior. So I've got my prayer pot here going. Right, now this guy's done. I want that prayer off as soon as I can because it's just going to waste as I'm down here and I'm out. Same thing, now I'm running to another one, so maybe if you wanted to switch your gear again, you could do another swap. Sorry, that's a very slow swap, but I don't want this gear, I want my other gear back on, so swap my gear back up. Right now I've got some mage gear and some tank gear, back down the hole. I want protect from range on this time, as I was talking about protection prayers earlier. There you go. Now I've got protect from range on, this guy can't do any damage to me. Now one of these brothers actually can hit through your prayer. His name is Varak. But the prayer's up. Look, my prayer's getting low. I got my F1 key. I can quickly switch to F1 and take another dose of prayer. Now I'm milking this a little bit to show you guys. I probably wouldn't have took a sip there. But prayer's off and I'm back out. Right, and I'm back out. Now I'm running again. Now if I had done this in a different cycle, now I'd be going back to Aram. Right? That was a terrible switch. But there you go. Now I'd be ready, put my thing on and go back down. So I'm gonna go over here. Let's go over to this guy. So let's say I came out of Aram, now right, put my gear back on, my magic gear, my tanky gear, down the hole. Right, I can click on the sarcophagus. Okay, that's a bad example because this is the, once you've killed all the bosses, you gotta go down the hole. So I'll run over here, put this gear on, right? Okay, now I'm back, don't need to eat, don't need to pray pot. Eat a shark maybe if you had to, right? That's just an example. Eat a prayer pot. Like I said, I'm milking it. You wouldn't normally eat there, but I'm just trying to demonstrate. Dig down, F2 key, pray, right? And you're grooving. That's the efficiency of the F keys. They can really make a difference. They can really make a difference, especially when you're doing, you know, the mid-game content like this. You want to be as quick as you can as you switch through. You want to be as quick as you can, so you want to be using that center button on your mouse to move that camera around so you can see quicker, and you want to have the ability to switch through. I mean, in this case, I'm not using teleports unless I were to teleport here. In some cases, you might be praying, you might be switching to your inventory, and you might be also switching to your magic book to cast a spell against an enemy, especially if you're doing games like LMS. So you want to have those F keys. They're very important. If you can, right away, get used to them. You're not going to use them for AFK, but get used to using them on quests. It takes about a week, and you don't know any different. Same with using the center button. And the only other thing I just want to comment on in this demo here is, and that's switches. So as I said, you might either want to have a synergy of gear, or you might want to have gear specific to a combat style. So here I know I'm fighting one person at a time. The center guy is going to be magic, and he is defensive against magic, which I'm using here. So I'm going to switch my gear out. And now I've got some range bonus gear on, the chest plate. I mean, this is a little, a unique setup to what I'm doing here. It's kind of hard to explain, but then you're gonna switch back. Those are terrible switches. And there's some very good players, like when you get into PKing, you want to be able to do these switches in a game tick. I'm not doing that. You want to practice them, but that's kind of gets into the meat and potatoes of the. This is brutal. This is brutal, but the meat and potatoes of the game when you're. You think I'd get one of these, but there you go. Switch it out, right? Switch out the game. Give me some slack, people. It's been a incredibly long day. There we go. There we got one. Now I'm just kind of messed up though. But there's the stuff, right? So you're gonna want to basically what you're gonna be doing in certain game situations, like LMS, which is Last Man Standing, which is a tri-bitting PvP form. You might be switching your gear on and off, and switching prayers as you go. And as well as also maybe casting spells in there. So you want to be able to navigate your, now I can do it. You want to be able to navigate between your prayers. I mean, I'm doing this just very randomly right now, but click on that, back to your prayer book. And then, so that's F1 I do personally. This is my setup. It can be for you. I use F1 for the inventory, F2 for the prayers, and F3 for the spell book. That way my pointer finger, my middle finger, and my ring finger are always on F keys, and then I have the escape as my, if you're in a PK situation or a PvP situation, this special attack, and this is a members item for free-to-play people, but your special attack bar here, or your button won't be available. You'll have to switch over to your combat style. And this is good even if you're just not using special attack. Maybe you just want to switch between combat styles if you want to use something accurate, rapid, or like I said, long range in bow and arrow situations for an extra 2 tiles. You can have your inventory and then quickly pinky over to the combat style, or even you can just move your ring finger over quickly. So I can just move my ring finger over, and that escape key's over there on its own. So if you're in a hurry, especially if you're doing PvP and you're kind of at that point where you can knock out your opponent, you can just kind of take your hand even off and smash that escape key. It's on its own. You can kind of use it with some ferocity and hit that special attack. So just wanted to give everyone a quick demo of what we were looking at in terms of actual combat. This is a members area, so free to play people, and unfortunately you're not gonna get to see this, but it is a good teaser of what you can see if you join up and come into the members worlds. Episode 4 is going to cover how to enjoy this game. That's what we're going to cover. So we're going to talk about how to enjoy this game, and I'm going to go over some of these bosses and reasoning for coming to the members worlds. So there's your demo on F keys, tab switching, gear swaps, and also using the mouse center button to navigate the camera. Okay everyone, we are back where we started here at Barrow Castle. This is a very, very in-depth guide. This was a lot to cover. I've actually split this episode into 2, so if you're seeing this outro, you're gonna see it twice. Halfway through the guide right now was 50 minutes long when I recorded it, so I'm gonna split it in 2. The first 20 minutes is going to be an auxiliary piece for people who are very, very new, brand new, beginners to the game, and then from the point on, we are going to have a guide that basically just covers stats and armor and synergizing and how to put different pieces together in pots or potions, I should say. And basically, for people who are intermediate players, maybe they might learn something, and then for new players who maybe been around a little bit, but are kind of over the initial hump, that way they can get a full download on stats and prayers and bonuses and potions and gear. So thanks everyone for tuning in, and please feel free to leave me a comment, questions, stop by this Twitch stream anytime if you want to go over it with me or my community, and subscribe, like, comment, you know the drill. Thanks everybody, appreciate it.